Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Ryan Young, and I'm the coordinator for the Technical Assistance and Research Center here at the National Council of Urban Indian Health. Again, thanks for joining us. This is the second part of a webinar series, Outreach and Marketing in the Native American Communities. Today's focus will be on Indian country wide. And again, if you haven't already done so, please provide your name and organization in the chat box. Again, that's located at the lower left side of your screen. All lines are currently muted. However, if you wish to ask a question, we ask that you write them in the Q&A pod at the lower right hand of your screen. We'll provide time for your questions to be answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar is tailored for those that serve in some type of communications and outreach role in Indian country. And by providing you this relevant information, these practical tips, NCUE aims to support you in being successful in your staffing and managing activities. Today's presenters are Kim Bussing and Josephine Keefe. Kim serves as Kaufman Associates Vice President of Communication and has nearly 10 years of experience in the communications field. She has spent the last 7 years at Kaufman Associates working on communications products related to education, public health, safety, and vulnerable population. She oversees the development of outreach tools related to healthcare for American Indians and Alaska Natives, including radio PSAs, videos, newsletters, fact sheets, print and online advertisements, and social media. Josephine started out at Kaufman Associates as a project specialist, working with at-risk communities on suicide prevention. And since then, Josephine has moved into the communications team as creative director. Josephine leads the creative process on all Kaufman and Associates communications projects, including advertisements, print materials, and videos. I'm going to pass things over to Kim now. Thanks, Kim and Josephine, for leading this training today.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Hello, everyone. Josephine and I are very excited to be here to share what we've learned about outreach to Indian country. So a couple of the objectives, what we'd like to accomplish today is we want to increase the understanding of current Indian countrywide outreach trends, and we're going to provide some best practices and examples in different areas. And we'll define some of these as well, social and digital media, publications, and outreach events. So I'd like to start with talking a little bit about technology in Indian country. So there are 16% of reservation households have no telephone service. About a third of the roads in Indian country are paved, and 90% of tribal populations lack high-speed internet access. And these numbers are actually from the Federal Communication Commission and U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. If you're interested in, apologies that I don't have the full source there, but I have my contact information at the end. If you're interested in more information and the source for that information, you can go ahead and contact me. So it's really good to remember these numbers as we're talking about outreach, and we're going to talk about different strategies. You know, one of the best things that we found for outreach in Indian country is really using a combination of strategies, because if you use just technological means, then you're going to be missing quite a few people. You know, despite that digital divide, though, and these numbers are from the Native Public Media and New America Foundation in 2009, so it is a few years old, but still really good information to kind of keep in mind. 94% of tribes had a website, so almost all tribes have a website. 84% of American Indian respondents use the internet several times a day. Nearly half use the social networking site. We're going to talk about social networking and social media later on. 92% owned a cell phone. 40% have a smartphone. And American Indians are incredibly tech savvy and use digital multimedia at rates even higher than the national norms. So things like digital storytelling, use of graphics and digital cameras, very high rates of those. As far as internet access in Indian country, New American Indians use a wireless form of internet connection, which is double the rate of the national average. Nearly half a little under half have broadband access at home, and for comparison, we included the U.S., the overall rate, which is 65%. But less than 10% have broadband access on tribal lands. And a significant increase, and we see this increasing year after year as well, use of smartphones to access the web, particularly with youth. And so this is important to keep in mind as you're crafting materials, websites, to make sure that they do work on smartphones, and just knowing that particularly young people are accessing the web and social media via their smartphones. So I'd like to stop, take a step back and define some of the terms that we're going to be talking about. A lot of times you'll see these used interchangeably, so we thought it would be helpful to kind of define each of these. So social marketing, and this is a lot of times used interchangeably with social media, but there are differences. Social marketing is marketing used to change the behavior that benefits everyone for the greater social good. So it's different than regular marketing where you're trying to sell a product, sell a car or something like that. Social marketing is really designed to benefit the greater good. Digital media is a very broad term. It's used to describe any digitized content, so any content that can be shared over the internet or even between computers. And so that can include text, audio, video, graphics, anything that's digitized. Social media are the tools that online tools that people use to share content. Social media can definitely be a part of social marketing, but they are different. And social networking, this is also, social media and social networking are kind of used interchangeably, but social networking is really the online tools that people use to build social relationships. They use them to promote community events and address common concerns. So as you're developing your social marketing strategies, three things, or products, marketing products, three things to really consider are audience, message, and medium. And when you define all of these and make sure that all of these work together, you'll really end up with an effective outreach product. So the first thing is to identify your audience. Who are they? What do they know about your topic? And what do they not know about their topic? The message is, what do you want them to do? What's the call to action? What are you asking them to do? And the medium is whatever you're using to convey that message to your identified audience. And this can take many different forms, even more than I've listed there, but I've got a few there. Some of the more common ones that we use. I'd like to stop right now and do our first poll question, so we'd like to hear from you. And so we'll just pause for just a second as we pull that up. And we're going to ask you a question about whether or not you have a current outreach strategy in place. And we'll be talking a little bit more about this later on, but it really is important to develop a strategy from the beginning, so it's your roadmap. So you can follow that as and it helps you define goals and then the steps that you'll take to achieve those goals.
The poll is closed now, but the results of it is that 30% of the audience uses social marketing strategy. 70% does not.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a few who do and a few who don't, and that's okay. We'll be talking a little bit more about how to build that as we go along. So as you're developing your strategy, and I mentioned this previously, it really works best when you have multiple approaches, and it does require, I'm sure for those of you who have it and have been doing it, you've realized, you've learned that it really does take time to do it well, especially social media, any kind of content creation. But you have to develop your overall strategy, you have to define your goals, that may mean talking to many different people in your organization, and, setting that strategy and determining the objectives and how you're going to achieve those goals. And then as well as producing, whatever content, whatever materials that you're going to use, all the mediums to achieve the goals that you set out. So it really does take time. And really working in Indian country, we found is the best way is multiple approaches. So we do radio, newspaper, different print, advertisements, postcards, social media, face-to-face connections. We'll be talking about some of these individually later on as well. And really it's about finding a good fit for your organization and for your goals. Maybe your audience isn't on social media as much, so you wouldn't want to do that as much. And, maybe it's, that you've learned that face-to-face connections and attending events and getting out and talking to people work the best. So really, it's about experimentation and listening and finding what's a good fit for you. And the end goal is really to get people involved and to change behavior. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Josephine here to talk about an example of an outreach campaign that we developed. We're actually kind of wrapping it up. We're at the kind of the end stages, but it's been a really fun project for us, and I'm gonna turn it over to Josephine to tell you a little bit more about it. Josephine?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. So this is an example of one of the campaigns that we at our company effectively used a very specific social media marketing strategy to build on a message. First, it was identifying with our client what the goal was. The goal was to initiate a grassroots discussion on and engagement in enrolling for healthcare. So we had our goal, we had our objective, and next it was to define who our target audience was. The target audience, as described with our client, was with urban Indians who are not within distance of an urban Indian health clinic. Through that, we analyzed and identified 10 areas across the United States where this grassroots messaging could be most effectively addressed with that target audience. And as Kim said, we are reaching kind of the end of this campaign. I believe we've already reached 7 of the 10 cities that were listed, and we have a couple coming up, and I believe some of the remaining ones will be in the summer. That's when we'll be wrapping up this campaign. So we found our 10 cities, and we had our objective. Get urban Indians talking about healthcare and the need for enrolling for healthcare. Next, it was to come up with a symbol for that and a message. We were inspired, and the client was inspired by street art or public arts and murals. Typically, public arts and murals, as many of you may have seen when you go out into your own communities or into other urban cities, it can take the form of a sculpture. It can take the form of a painting on the side of a building. It can take the form of spray paint. And we wanted this particular form of street art to pop up in each of these 10 cities, to travel, basically. And with that traveling, we would also be able to engage everyone through a social media discussion on where this street art would pop up next. We discussed a hashtag. Native Art for Health came out as, again, when you start to do your own research and educating yourselves on the power of social media, something that has become very popular in the last few years is the use of hashtags to continue a conversation. So when you're thinking about your social media strategy, think about the hashtags that are currently in use on the topics that you want to cover. With us, it was Native health. So we researched every hashtag that is currently being used on the topic of Native health or health in Indian country. Out of that, we created our own hashtag to help follow our specific discussion, Native Art for Health. We reached out as a call for artists, as consultants, to work on this campaign with us. We found that artist J. Nicole Hatfield was the one who would be able to really tell this message for us. And you'll see that the painting depicted here is our image. It is the image that was selected for this campaign. It's entitled Little Cheyenne Girl. And she represents what Native health is. And she was picked as being the image, the face of our campaign, Native Art for Health. So this image has been our pop-up image, our art that has been projected onto the sides of buildings across the United States, as well as popping up at some of the powwows across the U.S. that have been occurring over the last 6 months. And with that, we coupled that with a social media engagement. We set up a website. We planned out our Twitter engagement, Facebook engagement, Instagram engagement, again, using that Native Art for Health hashtag to continue the discussion. And that has been what has helped continue this campaign, to allow it to become bigger and bigger, to allow it to reach other platforms such as Indian Country Today, which featured our campaign in one of their stories a few months ago. It allowed for us to reach endorsement with Shoni Schimmel, and it's been a continued grassroots effort that has proven to be incredibly effective.
Great, thank you, Josephine. So we have another poll question for everyone. We'd like to know what social media channels you are currently using. We did notice from our last, from the first webinar in this series, there were quite a few questions for social media, so we will be spending some time on that. And so we just want to hear from everybody what social media channels you're currently using. And
Okay. It looks like most people, majority of the participants are using Facebook. And then one person indicated that they're using LinkedIn.
great. Okay, so we're gonna really dive into social media and give you some best practices here for use. So it's really helpful to hear that Facebook is really popular out there, and we've noticed that as well working in Indian country, that Facebook is still incredibly popular. You might hear some things about kind of mainstream trends about Facebook popularity is decreasing. You know, all the kids are leaving and going to the cooler channels, which there's some indication that that is happening with the numbers, but Facebook is still really popular. It's popular among young people, and it's growing in popularity with older people. So it's a good tool to reach a broad variety of people. And then Twitter and Instagram are growing. We're seeing that a lot in Indian country, and we'll talk a little bit about best practices for that. So with social media, you really want to develop a content schedule and a strategy. So this would be part of your overall social marketing strategy. And that content schedule is really important. Social media changes so often, things will become popular. And so you want to be able to, react to things that are happening in real time. But you can schedule out content. And what we do as a company is we meet monthly and we determine topics that we want to talk about for that month, and we make assignments and, develop a plan. So we have ongoing content development, and then as things come up, we can fit that in. Again, as I mentioned before, experimentation is great. See what works, put some content out there, and if it doesn't get any engagement, if nobody comments, if nobody likes, then that's great feedback for you. You know that, maybe you need to try something different. Or if something's, conversely, if something's very successful, then you'll know that you can keep going with that and, post similar content or structure your content the same way as that successful post. Social media is exactly that. It's social. So you want to make sure that, instead of just kind of throwing things out there, you really want to be engaging with people. So you want to listen. You want to respond. If people have questions, respond quickly. Tag others. And we'll talk about this specifically for each channel. But if you're tagging other people or other groups, then they will see that and they can respond. They may share something of yours. They, they may communicate there, and that just expands your reach. I think we talked about that in the first webinar a little bit, that was a good thing to do on Facebook. Tagging another group or another page, that just helps your content be more visible. Share posts from other groups, other pages. So that helps get their content out there, and then they can return the favor. So maybe, if you share something from another page, they might like your page, and then all their followers will see some of the things that you post. So that's a really great way to get your content out there. And then use of hashtags. Josephine talked a little bit about that, and we're going to go into more detail about that. You just don't want to use hashtags on Facebook. It supports it, but we found that posts using hashtags on Facebook aren't as visible. I think someone in the last webinar mentioned Facebook's algorithm. If you're not paying for your content to be placed, then it's not seen as easily, and that's just one of Facebook's tricks to generate revenue. But there are some ways around it, and we'll talk a little bit about that specifically for Facebook. But one of those things is hashtags. Every channel is different, and it has their own tricks and best practices. And again, we'll talk about that individually. And that was one of the questions that came up in the last webinar was how do you tailor your content for different channels, and we'll talk more about that. Pictures and video work great. We're very visual, and it just continues to grow with posts on social media. Anything with a picture or a video works great. And then think about your audience. What content are they interested in? What will they engage in? Humor works very well on social media. Anything that's kind of out of the norm and, is interesting and engaging. And then it's always important to, review your analytics and then adjust your strategy. You can do that during those regular meetings as you're developing the content. Revisit your strategy. Maybe quarterly you revisit it and adjust it. And every channel has their own analytics. And then there's some great free tools out there. You can certainly pay for tools that gives you more access to analytics, but there's so much free out there that you don't need to. And each channel is different about what information they'll provide. Facebook is great. They provide a lot of free analytics. Instagram's not so great. And I think just as they develop, those tools will change. But reviewing analytics is always really important. So I'm going to turn it over to Josephine to talk a little bit about Facebook specifically.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, so these are the basic best practices for Facebook when you're considering your marketing strategy for your company or group if you're starting a group. Keep posts short. You aren't restricted in the same way that Twitter restricts your characters 140 characters. You don't have that restriction in Facebook, but studies are showing that uh, people still kind of tune out, I guess, if the post goes too long, if it doesn't get to the point with basically within the first sentence. So shorter is always better. As Kim said, avoid hashtags. You know, it isn't to say that they aren't used on Facebook. They're just not as effectively used or supported as as a platform like Twitter or Instagram would be much more of a supportive platform to use hashtags. Include a picture or video to engage fans or feature healthy behaviors. Again, studies show that people react very positively to pictures, to videos, to memes, to GIFs. These engage people. They are immediately eye-catching within your feed of posts that you might get every minute. That's going to catch people's eyes. So you want to consider visually how you engage your audience. Feature healthy behaviors. When you think about healthy behaviors and Facebook best practices, determine your voice and your tone. I think that kind of goes into, picking the pictures, the videos, how you engage your fans. You want to determine what your voice and your tone is. That helps with your messaging. An example of that is Healthy Active Natives, the group. It's all very motivational. There's nothing negative. Every image, every post is all from a motivational place, and that is the tone and the messaging that's been set and is very effective with their followers. If you post a video, upload to Facebook directly. So that can be that sometimes, Kim, maybe you can help describe this one a little better than I can. It's not as supported if you're uploading it from a different source.
Right, so that's one of the ways to get around that Facebook algorithm. So if you upload it to, say, YouTube and share the link, Facebook isn't as willing, I guess, for lack of a better word, to have that seen by as many people as possible. If you upload it directly to Facebook, then more people will see it because the Facebook algorithm basically favors something that you uploaded directly to Facebook than if you're using a different channel. They want to promote their own channel. So anything you can do to work within Facebook gets your stuff seen by more people.
Exactly, yeah. So sometimes if you may notice that sometimes you may try to upload a video and what will come up is the link, but not a picture or a still frame of that video. It'll just be this really, really long link, which is unattractive. It's not eye-catching. It's taking up space. So uploading it directly through your Facebook post, you'll be more likely to get that nice still frame image of the video that people can easily click on in order to view that video directly. Let's see, post to timeline before the album. Kim, if you want to address that one.
Sure. So this, if you create an album and you put your picture in there, it just requires one more click to kind of get, if you have any descriptions or anything, people will see the picture and any kind of content that you post with it a little bit easier if you just post it right to your timeline. Once again, it's just one of those tricks to getting people to see your stuff a little bit more.
Comment, share, and tag others. So it's keeping a good phrase that I like to use within our communications team is keep the social in social media. So continue that conversation. Someone posts someone comments on your post, immediately respond to that. Comment, like. If you receive a story or something that fits in line with your message and your branding, share that. Engage others in the conversation. tagging people within that post who are also of that shared or like-minded messaging is all very effective, and it keeps the conversation going, and it broadens the conversation to a larger audience within the social media network. Post often. So these are the days that prove to be the highest in visibility for your Facebook engagement. Thursdays, Fridays, early afternoons of your audience. Early afternoons, it's showing that it's people who are on their lunch breaks. It's also within time zones across the United States. It's and the world internationally. It's going to be when more people are awake and active and on their Facebook. So you're trying to think of how do I reach out to my audience at the most effective time when more people will see this post. So best practices for Twitter, keep it short. So the characters that you can't go past, 140 characters, that includes your hashtags. Include a visual. Again, pictures are always really nice, always engaging. It's eye-catching within a feed. Twitter moves a lot faster than Facebook does. So, and it requires continuous interaction and socializing within a given topic or hashtag discussion, whatever's trending. Sometimes if you have a Twitter account, sometimes you can see what's trending. Twitter likes to kind of link what's trending to maybe what your interests are. So you'll see what is already being discussed, and you can see whether or not that discussion fits with your messaging and your tone, what you've decided your messaging within your Twitter account is going to be, and you can start to engage in that conversation. It is a continuous conversation on Twitter. Using 2 to 3 hashtags. Twitter likes to, you can have as many hashtags as you want, but the most effective use of hashtags is to keep them short and concise and limited to 2 or 3. It's proven to be the most effective in engagement and interest in your Twitter post. Tagging others. If you tag others, again, you are broadening your conversation spectrum. By tagging someone else, the people who follow that person, your post is now visible to them. They are able to see it, and they can comment, and they can engage. So consider who you're tagging within that post, and how that might grow the conversation that you're attempting to have via your Twitter engagement. Listen and respond. So Twitter, because it's happening moment to moment, it's moving very quickly, it's important to be responsive. To be listening, to respond to people who respond to your post. Whether it's negative or positive, it's always good practice to respond. Retweet others. It's really nice. Again, continuing that conversation, but if you see within a Twitter discussion or a hashtag that's being used, and you find that another person has used that hashtag and they are mentioning something that you find incredibly interesting, or they have said within 140 characters very concisely what you agree with, you can retweet that and share that. And again, it's continuing that conversation. Post often, weekdays, lunchtime, and early evenings. So again, we're targeting a time when people aren't working, when they're not at their desk, or they're on their lunch breaks, or they're done with work for the day. These are the high flow, high volume times of the day when people are most active on Twitter, and you are more likely to engage your audience, your target audience, in a discussion.
Great, thanks, Josephine. It's interesting because what we've seen with trends is that people, and I'll talk about LinkedIn here in a minute, but as the work week starts, the work and school week, people are really engaged with their jobs and what they're doing, so they'll spend more time on LinkedIn. And as the days and the week progresses, they get more distracted by kind of the fun aspects of social media. So you'll see Twitter and Facebook engagement kind of grow as the week progresses. I thought that's a really interesting trend that we've seen. So best practices for Instagram. Instagram is growing very quickly. Personally, it's my favorite social media channel. I love it. Photographs work the best, as you would probably expect. And by photographs, I mean as opposed to graphics. So as opposed to infographics or diagrams or things like that, people want to see photos, of real life and of people and faces and all that good stuff. Instagram, as opposed to Twitter, it seems like the more hashtags, the better. And the hashtags there's a little bit of art and science to them. So it's great to look at what other people are doing and experiment. And you can use really general hashtags and to specific. I'm trying to think of an example, like maybe hashtag native or something that's really kind of more general as opposed to something like hashtag native art for health that's more specific. You can do a mixture of those. And you can use a ton of them. I think the last thing I saw was posts with like 10 hashtags do the best. And short videos are great. You can do 30-second, and I believe it's just changed. You can go up to 60 seconds on Instagram, which is awesome. Comments, tell people you like their photo, and Instagram is there's a lot of interaction that goes on in the comments. So, it's just like everything else being social and talking to other people. You want to limit what's called regramming. That means that's like retweeting on Twitter. Retweeting on Twitter is great. Doing that same thing on Instagram is not really encouraged. And, every social media channel has its own etiquette, and Instagram is really all about individual content. So when you regram, it requires an app, so you have to download a separate application in order to do it. And really the etiquette is on Instagram, if you have to do it, make sure you give credit. Never regram something without giving credit. So mention who you got it from. And it's okay to do it occasionally, you just don't want to do it a lot. Instagram's all about having original content. Post often, weekdays, highest on Monday, and outside of work hours. So I guess people might need to be a little distracted at the beginning of the work week. Instagram doesn't really fit that trend that I was describing, like Twitter and Facebook growing more popular as the week progresses. But outside of work hours, people aren't checking Instagram as much during the day. The next one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is its own, really its own channel focused on professional development. So if your organization has a page, make sure you keep it up to date. Much like all the other channels, you want to post often and, comment and respond to everyone, to others, join in the conversation as much as possible. It's really used for more formal posts. It's a great place for job announcements. That's where people are going to, for that career change, for that next step. News, any kind of professional development, webinar announcements work great, any kind of events. And then weekdays during business hours, and then there's Tuesdays. So it gets pretty specific, but there's some tips for posting on LinkedIn. And just all of the best practices for when to post would be great to include in your content strategy. So you can mark exactly, you've got the types of content that you want to post, and then when you post them. So we're going to talk about tailoring your content to the different channels. This is a specific question that came up in the last webinar. And we're going to use our Native Art for Health campaign as an example. and we're going to show you how we tailored the content for each channel. You really don't want to do the exact same content to every channel, because chances are you're going to have followers that are following you on multiple channels. You know, if I really want to engage with someone, I will follow them on, you know, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, but I don't want to see the same content. I want to see different pictures, different information that I may not, you know, have seen somewhere else. And, you know, a lot of times I'll spend, you know, like I mentioned, Instagram's my favorite. I really like Twitter as well. Facebook I use a lot for family. So there's different, I go to the different channels for different reasons, and a lot of other people are like that too. So our first example here is on Facebook, and we actually posted a link to the website. So we posted a link, but we deleted the link text from the post. You can see there up at the top that we have the content. We didn't use any hashtags. We don't have the link text in there. And it's just a link to the Native Art for Health website. So we're hoping to drive people there and get them to click on our website and find out more information. The next one is Twitter. So you can see the picture is different. This one we actually posted a picture from one of our events, and we developed a coloring page from our artwork, which has been a really great way to get people to our booth. So we've got the art projection, but we've also been doing exhibit booths in the different cities, and so we've got a coloring page that brings kids and their families to the booth. And so we have a picture there of a couple of kids that came to the booth and did their coloring page. And it might be it's looking a little blurry on my screen, but you can see that, you know, we said great coloring, and we included the hashtag, and there were a couple of hashtags there, and then we tagged the event, so the Chasco Fiesta, and we included our URL. So, you know, like we said with the best practices, we used 2 hashtags, and then we tagged the event. And then for Instagram, this is actually a picture from the event, and you can see, so again, different image, and then we did a bunch of hashtags there. And so, you know, I thought this was a really good example to show how you can tailor the same topic, but different content for each channel. Another question that came up in the last webinar is we did a poll at the end and asked what topics people were interested in. And one of the things that you let us know was that we wanted information on audience identification. So as we've been talking about, you know, listening on social media, you can see who's posting, so you can see who's engaging with your content. Website analytics are a really great source of information as well. Google Analytics is probably the best thing out there, and it's free. And it provides all kinds of information. And you'll probably have to, going back to that point we made earlier, that social marketing takes time. One of the things that takes time is definitely looking at analytics. And, you know, as you learn and spend more time with it, you'll be able to dig down deeper and get to some more information. But website analytics, they can show you where your audience is coming from, where they're located geographically, what kind of technology they're using to access your website. There's all kinds of really great information in website analytics. You can send out a survey. There's tools like SurveyMonkey. You can do online surveys and just a few questions, and you can get a lot of information. Guidance there is just to keep it as brief as possible. You know, people are really busy, but you can, you know, ask a few questions and you can get some information that way. Another way that we found is effective is consider posting a blog by someone involved with your organization, and then ask for comments. And so you can see who's posting, and you can see what they think about your clinic and programs. It both contributes to increasing your visibility, but also getting feedback on what people think and what they know. You know, and that goes back to knowing your audience and what they know about what you're trying to communicate. The next topic that you all were interested in was the brand and platform standard guide. And these there are templates out there, free templates that you can use if you just Google them. Same thing for your social media strategy and content strategy. There's some great free templates out there that will help guide you as you develop them. It's really important to start with your vision, mission, and values, and that really sets the base for what you want to do with your brand. If you have a logo, define how that's used. So what colors can be used, what size can be used. Determine your fonts and typography. So if you want to limit it to certain fonts, and that really adds to the consistency of your materials. Same thing with colors and images. Determining the text and tone, Josephine mentioned voice with social media. It's important with all your products that you have a voice and a tone that you want to take. And again, that contributes to the consistency across all of your products. And then developing social media guidelines. We've been talking about developing a strategy, developing a timeline, and, so setting those guidelines. What channels are you going to post to? What times? And then it's also good to have mitigation strategy if there's any kind of negative feedback, kind of how you're going to address that. A lot of times you can just, if it's just kind of a minor comment, you can just ignore it. But really kind of setting those guidelines for when you should ignore something and when you should address it, it's really good. So then you don't have to be reactive when it happens. You already have a strategy in place for dealing with it. And again, there are lots of tools online to help you develop those mitigation strategies. One of the best ways we've found to conduct outreach in Indian country is really face-to-face events. And there are a lot of options, local, regional, and national. Everybody really just wants to talk to each other face-to-face, despite all of these advancements in technology. That really is such a great way to get your message out there. If you are going to attend events, any kind of giveaway, even if it's just a brochure or a postcard, something to bring people into the booth and get them talking to you is always effective. I mentioned with the Native Art for Health campaign, we had the coloring page. That has been, a really cost-effective way to get people in to talk to. The kids come in color, and we can talk to their parents about healthcare coverage options. So, and then the back of the coloring page has a link to our website for more information. It's been a very effective giveaway. If you have an event that you want to attend, let them know who you are, and, if you're a nonprofit, a lot of events won't charge for nonprofits. So you can work out, or they have a discounted rate. If there's no budget or staff available to travel and staff an exhibit booth, you can always check with organizers to get materials in swag bags. A lot of times they'll hand out bags at the door, and we've gotten our materials in for little to no cost. So that's a good cost-effective strategy if you can't have someone there staffing a booth. Plan ahead, get in touch with the organizers early. That is always helpful. If you want to disseminate materials, it's always really beneficial to start building those relationships early. And then if you do attend, make sure you write down all the questions that you get, the attendance, and then number of items that you've given out, and that helps with your outreach strategy. Especially with the recording the questions, you can then if you're getting the same question over and over again, you can add those to your outreach materials. Maybe you do a fact sheet or a brochure or something like that that addresses that question. And then that goes back to you having to give away at the booth. So that reporting of what occurred is always helpful for subsequent outreach efforts. Just to finish up, I know we've gone through a lot of information. We have some resources here for you. We have the Native Public Media website. This one, they were the ones that did the technology in Indian country report that I referenced earlier. They have a lot of great resources, and they really keep up on outreach in Indian country and media in Indian country, so it's a great resource. DigitalGov is one that we really like to use. This is a government website, and they do a lot of they give a lot of resources and information about developing digital products, and it's really helpful because their focus is on that social marketing, and they also understand what it's like to work with a budget. So all of their resources are free, and they can give you some really cost-effective ideas for getting the word out there digitally. Social Media Examiner is just a great overall social media resource. They are always sending out updates. They have a great newsletter, and they really monitor trends and best practices. And so they can tell you when the best time to post on different channels, ways for tailoring content. There's a lot of great resources there. And the last one is the Racial Equity Resource Guide. This is a resource from the Kellogg Foundation that it's a directory of materials, and it's a tool for building a community of connected, informed, and engaged practitioners. And it's a fantastic online resource. It's really fun to use, and there's a lot of great information there. And so I think at this time we will, actually, before we get to the questions, we saw your feedback that there was only one option for the social media channel. So we're actually going to open up that poll again and give you a chance to respond with more than one channel. So we'll just pause here for just a moment, and if you want to go ahead and submit the channels that you use, and you can select more than one this time. And then if Ryan, if you could summarize that again for me, that would be great.
Sure. Same as the last poll, it looks like Facebook is at the top of the list with 88%, almost 89% of the participants indicating Facebook. And Twitter is in second, 40-some percent. And then the third would be LinkedIn with 33%.
Great.
And then 22% indicate other.
Okay. Other, if you're willing, you can just add what that is in the chat. I'm just kind of curious. One of the things that we're seeing really growing, especially among young people, is Snapchat. So it's similar to Instagram, but you can add some effects and some kind of fun things to your pictures. YouTube. And website only. Good. So, quite a variety out there. That's really great to see. It sounds like people are really using the tools out there in a variety of them. So we have a few minutes left. I know we gave you a lot of information. I was hoping to get through it a little bit faster so we could allow some more time for questions. But if you have any questions, you can go ahead and submit those in the Q&A box. And then the last slide we have here is we've included our contact information, so there's an email address. So if you think of questions later on, you want additional information, feel free to reach out to us. And then we have all of our social media channels listed there for KAI. If you're curious, we always love more followers. And then if you want to see kind of how we do content, you can follow us on there and maybe see some examples as well.
Again, thanks for presenting today all this useful information. Thanks to all the participants for joining us today. Again, the survey is in the participant chat. If you have a moment to do that, we'd really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today.